Now open Mary, Our Lady of Peace Mausoleum in Flushing, New York. Secure your family's future with 10% down, no taxes, and 0% interest financing for up to 10 years on pre-need crypts and cremation niches starting at just $25 per month. Protect your loved ones with the gift of pre-planning. Visit them today at Mount St. Mary Cemetery. Call 718-353-1560. That's 718-353-1560 or go to ccbklyn.org to learn more. That's ccbklyn.org.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
All right, Rita, let's bring in...
We've got Mark Penn.
Mark Penn, what the heck is going on? What's going to happen with the debate?
Yeah, Mark, what do you anticipate is going to happen tonight? I believe this could be one of the most consequential vice presidential debates given the dynamics. Go ahead.
Well, you can choose. It's a dog fight. It's a wrestling match. It's a cockfight. I mean, I just think that this is going to be, I think they're going to come out of the gate, and I would be surprised if they weren't really going at each other for 90 minutes.
Well, I mean, and we were talking before the show. If I'm J.D. Vance, I would look straight at Tim Walz and I would say the world's on fire tonight. Look at what's happening with Russia, Ukraine. Look at this moment where we just saw Iran raining down missiles on Israel, and your weak policies have contributed directly to it. Your bosses, Kamala Harris, you owe the world an apology. That would be my first statement, my opening statement.
Yeah, that would be strong. I mean, once upon a time I did a 3 a.m. ad, and certainly this is the kind of circumstance now, I think, where foreign affairs and who's a stronger commander-in-chief could play a bigger role in this election. And you're right, we'll see whether or not. Now, these campaigns have been pretty steadfast at keeping to domestic issues because they know that these our U.S. voters are so U.S.-centric. But sometimes when events like this happen, it thrusts foreign affairs into a more central role.
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting because you're right. I mean, it was economy. Obviously, it was border we saw on so many issues. I think, though, it's interesting, Mark. I feel tonight, and I'm curious your thoughts, that Vance sort of has a double duty, obviously. He's got to, first and foremost, obviously go after Kamala Harris's record, but his own record will also be under attack. He's sort of got the double duty. In many ways, it's tougher, I think, sometimes for the VP in this case. And I'm saying it obviously on Tim Walz. And boy, is there a lot of material on Tim Walz. I mean, you could not see sort of two different people. One was saying Minneapolis shouldn't burn, and the other and his wife were applauding it.
Well, I think, too, the big question is Vance going to go after his military record, or which of course Walz will be completely prepared for with some kind of retort that they've worked up in debate prep, or is he going to stay away from that because he knows it's going to get such a violent reaction that it's a little unpredictable whether you win or not. So I think that's, and I think he's definitely going to go after the weak on crime. But, it's interesting. I think both of these candidates are very capable debaters, and we're going to see a show very different from the last two because both of these are, I think very verbally talented and able to maneuver and explain things, in ways that in some ways the presidential candidates can't.
And also open mics too. This I think is different because this time they will have open mics so they can talk over each other. And Tim Walz may start with his whole, the circle back sake, I call it, which is what Kamala does well. It's going to be interesting if Vance can get him in a corner like a rope-a-dope, if you will, if you're boxing, because he's going to try to kind of keep coming out of the corner. And he's going to have to force, I also think the moderators, too, will play a big role, as they certainly did last time, 3 against 1.
Well, that's where it's going to be interesting to see if they start doing the same thing and start, correcting Vance and say, because obviously these new immigration statistics that most people haven't heard, but then what time period do they cover? But it really doesn't matter, even if it covers a longer time period. Most of the entrants were really in the last couple of years because the number of people coming in went up threefold. So, it'll be interesting to see if Vance is clearly going to say 500,000 criminals let in the country, and then we're going to see whether the moderators say, "Oh no, that's not true. That doesn't cover," or whether or not they require Waltz to refute or not refute, the accuracy of that charge.
What would you ask, Mark? I also would, if I were a moderator, I've moderated a number of debates, I would also say to Waltz, do you condemn the protesters out there carrying Hamas flags? I want to have him say something that he doesn't want to answer because he's not going to want to alienate that base, and you can't do, sort of a spin around. That's going to be the key, and if the moderators don't do it, Vance is going to have to do it.
Well, I came from a middle-class family.
And you're holistic, right? You've got a holistic approach.
Mark, this is George Pataki. Let me just barge in here for a minute. My understanding, you know better than me, but my understanding is that almost no one makes a decision on the presidential level based on the vice presidential candidate. They vote for the president. And to me, that means that, while Vance has a lot of ammunition to go after Waltz, is that misfiring? Should he not be going after Harris? Talking about all the things she said that were wrong during the course of the debate, fact-checking her, as opposed to going after Waltz's record.
Well, I agree with you. Primarily, what's interesting about this is we have not seen two articulate debaters argue their cases in front of the American public the way that these two could. And so if Vance, who has really proven to be quite strong in interviews, can really articulate the case for Trump versus Harris, particularly in the context of inflation, immigration, and a world on fire, that probably is the job one. And I think job two, because everybody, loves the fights, job two is going to be some back and forth here and pushing back and forth on some of this stuff. But what I really think the value of the debate will be is really putting the case in a way that people can say, that makes sense. I can understand now why I'm voting one way or the other.
Great points. Mark Penn, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Really powerful. We'll see. And again, our coverage gets underway at 8:30 here on WABC Radio.
Janine Pirro here for Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group helps Americans protect their future with the most trusted store of wealth in human history, physical gold and silver. If you're retiring or retired, go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Pirro for your free Janine Pirro Colonial Metals Group Retirement Protection Kit, or call 800-965-8004. 800-965-8004 now to receive a free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver.